It is a great pleasure to be able to speak at this meeting on behalf of the National Union Teachers and I suppose on my local group, the Chartist in Derby, that we've just got going. And it's not just a pleasure to speak at the meeting, but I don't think we should understate or underestimate what it is that we're doing today. The history of our society, the history of Britain, is the history of class struggle. Many people have said that before. In fact, the strength of the position in Parliament is largely determined by the strength of the position of our class in society.
Imran introduced me as a student, but in fact I graduated in the summer of this year. As a young person, my prospects look increasingly bleak. While I have been struggling to find temporary work since graduation, many of my friends have faced long stints of unemployment, many of whom have first-class degrees. These were young people that were encouraged by the Labour government to enter higher education. And in many ways we have been betrayed. Higher education hasn't opened the doors that were promised to us. For many, it's simply left them riddled with thousands of pounds worth of debts. Debts that look set to increase for future students if tuition fees do rise as they're expected to in the coming years. The solutions offered to young people by the Labour government have ranged from master's courses to unpaid internships. These are simply economically unfeasible for many, and for me this shows just how out of touch the government is with the young people of today. Increasingly, I think we face the danger of young people being completely disillusioned with politics. We're consistently demonised in the press, and it seems only now, when unemployment looks set to hit the politically significant mark of 1 million in the under-24s, that the Labour government has sat up and said, and taken note at all, and said they're going to take any action. This is simply not good enough. Young people need a popular movement that they can rally around. We're often accused of apathy, but I believe this is untrue. We have only to look at the response in young people to the recent rise in the exposure of the BNP to know that young people do care about the issues that face us today. The reality is that we simply have no outlet to vent the frustrations or fight for what we believe in. I hope the Charter will offer an alternative for these people. The Charter doesn't demonise young people, it sees us as part of the solution, not the problem. The Charter offers a potential alternative and offers hope to the young that this isn't the only way. And this hope, I believe, is desperately needed in the current economic climate. And that's all I'd like to say.
Excellent. Some estimate will be as many as 350,000 jobs to go. And not since the dark days of Thatcher are we needing a trade union and labour movement prepared to fight and struggle against those cuts. And unfortunately, when you look to the political masters who lead us, what is on offer already is their manifestos being presented before us is an offer of savage or severe cuts. And it's no wonder in that situation that millions, in effect, have abandoned New Labour and will not vote in the general election as they see no hope. And that is why I welcome the Charter. Because if dealt with correctly, it can pose a manifesto of hope to those millions. But it does pose a number of questions on the Charter itself. Firstly, we do have to answer the question of where the means will come from for achieving that. And I don't believe we should apologise for the demands and the calls for public ownership. Why should it be the case that literally people will die simply because they cannot afford medication from the NHS while pharmaceutical companies make millions? And the second question it poses is how and through what vehicle can we achieve this platform? And a manifesto, in my view, without a political voice can end up being nothing other than an empty wish list. And the reference has been made to the welcome support of the trade unions, and that is true for those who offer their genuine support. But I have to say, for some, I don't believe it is genuine. Inside my own trade union, on our national executive, for a year, they opposed the People's Charter. And I too was at the TUC and saw what the reality was that was posed. When Derek Simpson from Unite moved the amendment, he said that they were in effect backing the People's Charter on the basis only that it was promoting progressive policies within New Labour. It will be a fundamental mistake to reduce the People's Charter to be little more than a begging list a begging letter to be handed to New Labour. For 12 years, the trade unions have begged and pleaded with New Labour, pleading to stop privatisation, pleading to stop the attacks and pay freezes. Frankly, pleading with New Labour to treat ordinary workers decently is like pleading with the Pope to stop going to Mass on a Sunday, and is as futile. And the final comment I wanted to make is that is why I believe it is absolutely urgent that yes, we have a manifesto of hope, but we give voice and organisation to that hope. And we adopt, in my opinion, the correct strategy of Bob Crow, who's not going to abandon those people who need a voice. That we begin building an alternative, of launching those candidates in the general election and preparing to retie the knots of history of 100 years ago, when the trade unions said enough is enough. If New Labour now would rather speak for the millionaires and the millions, then it's time we speak for ourselves and begin the preparations for a new Workers' Party. Thanks very much.
Council, we're going to residents. Residents want to stand candidates, but unfortunately that's not enough because we don't have financial backing. And I've said this before, I think what we really need is trade unions to start putting up candidates with financial backing as well. I think that's very important that we look to that. It's disgraceful what's happened in our borough. Not only do we have a Tory middle-income borough, I have to say, we have Labour MPs. One of the Labour MPs is actually arrogantly defending the expenses scandal. He's part of the Justice Group and thinks he's been victimised by the press over his expenses because he needs a house in Hendy and he needs a house in Westminster. He can't travel between Hendy and West. He's actually said that in a letter to one of his constituents. He's on the paper for saying that, defending the expenses. So this is the joke. He's also supported part privatisation of the Royal Mail. But it's a frightening reality. We have so much work to do. They're doing it right now in Barnet Council, implementing these outrageous services. You know, Ryanair, Motorway, jump in the queue. You can pay extra just to jump in the queue. They can charge you for every service. The taxpayers' money will be paid on such a scale, and you'll get more service quality delivery, I have to say. So, time is running out before the general election. And it's great having a People's Charter, but we've got to move a lot faster because we're going to have 5 years of hell, I'm afraid, whoever comes to power.
Earlier in the discussion that what we needed to do was make the People's Charter the key campaign that people came to. And I thought in that context, it's really important to recognise that cannot happen unless the Charter exists in reality locally. So we need to take a Charter which, for everything everyone said, is fantastic on paper, does give us an opportunity to bring these demands together, to bring different groups together, but it now needs to exist in your local communities across the whole